We've had a growing set of customers as well as an internal research program really look at the ability to simulate materials. These two threads, growing excitement around the ability to do magnetic material simulation and the growing power of our technology and the ability to do coherent quantum annealing at scale, form the core of our Supremacy results.
Welcome to a very special 100th episode. And what better way to celebrate 4 years of the post-quantum world than to talk about an achievement we've all been waiting for? If you've been watching quantum news feeds, you might have heard of the D-Wave Supremacy paper published in Science. Using an Advantage 2 system, D-Wave performed a useful task for materials science faster and with less power consumption than a classical supercomputer. Researchers have tried to challenge this, but the results seem to be holding up. Has the team at D-Wave really done it? Are quantum computers finally passing the threshold into true utility? Find out in this episode of the Post-Quantum World. I'm your host, Konstantinos Karagiannis. I lead quantum computing services at Protiviti, where we're helping companies prepare for the benefits and threats of this exploding field. I hope you'll join each episode as we explore the technology and business impacts of this post-quantum era. Our repeat guest today is the CEO of D-Wave, Dr. Alan Baratz, and he's joined by Chief Development Officer, Trevor Lanting. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Konstantinos. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great. So we must be talking about something pretty major if you're both here, and that's an understatement. When I started this podcast 4 years ago, my going estimate for quantum computing beating classical computing was about 3 to 5 years. So thanks for helping me nail that right in the middle. I appreciate that, because here we are, 4 years. And of course, we're talking about the infamous quantum supremacy paper. So I guess for everyone listening who hasn't been paying attention to quantum news at all, can you start by explaining what makes this demonstration of quantum supremacy unique compared to previous claims, like from Google 2019, et cetera?
Yep. So why don't I go ahead and take that, and Trevor should feel free to weigh in as he thinks appropriate. First of all, you characterized it as infamous. I'm not sure why you did that. I would say it's an amazing paper.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. Just when I said infamous, I meant there's a lot of attention already, surrounding it. Yeah. Not anything you guys did. I mean, everyone is weighing in on this. So that's where the infamy comes from. I think it's amazing.
And by the way, the fact that everybody is weighing in on it is good. We are very interested in any and all feedback and perspectives on the work, which we think is absolutely groundbreaking. So, as you pointed out, quantum supremacy in some sense is what everybody in the quantum industry aspires to, namely being able to demonstrate that they can solve an important, useful problem on a quantum computer that cannot be solved classically. And I want to emphasize the two words important and useful. Because up until now, all of the attempts at demonstrating quantum supremacy have been on contrived problems, computations that have no practical value whatsoever. This is the first time that anybody has demonstrated the ability to solve a problem on a quantum computer that cannot be solved classically, which actually has important real-world impact. In our case, it's in the area of computing properties of magnetic materials, which is important across a variety of different industries.
When it comes to the other stories that got attention over the past few months, for some reason, everyone latched on to Google's 10 to the 25 years to do this on the classical computer. And Joe Rogan went crazy with that. And he's like, oh, can you believe this? Now quantum and AI. And that just became its own phenomenon, how many times he misuses quantum in a day. So one thing I like to specify is random circuit sampling is, as you said, pretty useless. I mean, all it is proving that a quantum computer is doing something quantum. That's not proving that, I like to think of it this way. If I wanted to simulate a cup of water going down a sink and I did it with a cup of coffee, you wouldn't call me a scientific genius. It's just so similar that it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, of course that would do better than a classical computer, but you're talking about something that could be used actually in the industry. So let's take a look at that. And why did you choose this problem? I'm assuming because you had some intuition that it was going to work. and what kinds of things can we do with it in the real world?
Basically, this is building on, this result is building on several years of sort of intense exploration of a regime that we are calling coherent quantum annealing. So as we're able to make the fundamental devices higher and higher performance and effectively extend their coherence times, that opens up the ability to do annealing and to do calculations without getting disturbed by the environment. And so fundamentally, we've done a series of benchmarking papers and fundamental papers showing the power of this regime. And so this is really built on, many years of research and improvements in our hardware. We've also had sort of a growing set of customers, as well as sort of an internal research program to really look at sort of the ability to simulate materials. So to do materials discovery and do material simulation on our platform. And fundamentally at the core, this is taking sort of these two threads, like in that growing excitement around the ability to do magnetic material simulation and the growing power of our technology and the ability to do coherent quantum annealing at scale. And together these form the core of our supremacy results. So really, when you're thinking about designing new materials, the traditional way is to, build those materials out, actually fabricate them and do experimental tests on those materials in the laboratory, in laboratory settings, subject those materials to changing conditions, and then measure the response. And this is really time consuming. So, you have to do a lot of this sequentially. It takes time to build these things out and to do the measurements. What we're showing is that for a set of materials, basically lattice structures of different dimensions, we can study something called a quantum phase transition. So, which is an important material property in some of these magnetic materials. We're basically studying the behavior of these materials subject to a change. So, in this case, in changing magnetic field, and measuring at the dynamics of a phase transition. And this is something that fundamentally is beyond the reach of classical computing.
One of the reasons why this is so important, and let me give you a specific application example. Magnetic materials are used in a variety of different applications, but one important one is as sensors. Mm-hmm. And, you find them in, a variety of different medical diagnosis devices and other devices. But what's interesting about the use of magnetic materials as sensors is that they become most sensitive as you get close to that phase transition point that Trevor was talking about. And so when you go to investigate and evaluate new materials, particularly with respect to their applicability in various application areas, one of the things you do want to understand is, what is that phase transition point and how sensitive do they become at that point? And so our ability to now evaluate these materials by determining A, where is that phase transition point for new materials, and B, how do they react at that point is extremely important for the evaluation of new materials in different application areas.
Because that's a big space of possibilities, right? When you're trying to make a selection and narrow it down, and that's where you can get into the millions of years kind of idea, right? Because you'd have to account for every type of material, every type of situation, and find that point.
Well, actually, this isn't about taking millions of years to evaluate millions of different materials. This is about taking millions of years to evaluate each individual material. So
because of
a million years for this one, a million years for that one, a million years for the other.
Okay. So, well, if you got time on your hands now. So it wasn't also the supremacy claim wasn't just that you're able to do it faster. There's also this beautiful benefit of what we hope that quantum computing will use less power, right? Is there some of that involved?
Yeah, the classical methods that we benchmarked against to really kind of establish the scaling and what resources would actually be required to do this calculation. Those the current state-of-the-art classical methods are like a class of techniques generally called tensor network methods. And you need large clusters of GPUs, which are very power hungry to actually run even the kind of the smaller scale parts of the calculation. And so not only this timing estimate that Alan has spoken about the up to 1 million years to actually do this calculation classically, for the intermediate to largest sort of systems that we studied in this paper, we're estimating that to do this with these GPU clusters would take basically the annual global energy consumption. So it's not just about time, but it's about the immense amount of energy required for classical computers to basically even sort of do the smallest scale of these problems.
So a couple of the biggest, I guess, challengers to this have used the tensor network argument, right? And I guess already we've said that would take a lot of power, for sure. But isn't it true then that they also didn't do, as you alluded to, didn't do the whole problem with tensor networks, basically? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, the classical methods and the state of the art are methods based on the tensor networks, and I think they're able to kind of attack the very, very smallest scale lattices, the low dimensional lattices, the shortest anneal times, essentially the easy regime in this overall simulation problem. And so we're excited to see a lot of the advancements on the classical methods, because it really allows us to understand the real boundary between sort of what is classically feasible and completely infeasible. And there is a gap. So these methods are not able to close the gap between sort of what they can do and what we can do and what we've demonstrated with this work.
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce what Trevor said, we are very interested in understanding the state of the art for classical approaches to solving these types of problems and how far that can be pushed to really understand, as Trevor said, what the true dividing line is between what can be done classically and what requires quantum. And so any work that helps clarify that boundary is important. And so to the extent that we can get a bit more out of classical, whether it's tensor networks or some other approach, is always going to be of interest to us. But at the same time, as Trevor said, we know that computations that we have performed are on the other side of that boundary. And so, we can see the gap start to close, but it will not, start to narrow, but it will not close.
Okay. So you obviously welcome any groups to run their own testing and try and help you show that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For us, good science is good science. We think that the work that we've done is amazing science. We think there are other good research groups out there. We encourage the work. But the one thing we want to be careful of is that nobody overstate or mislead with respect to the work that they've done. So it's important to be clear about what you've done. We've been very clear in our paper about the lattices that we've investigated, the sizes of those lattices, the evolution times, the properties we've computed, and what our view is on, the need to be able to address all of that in order to basically claim, supremacy, right? So it's important that for anybody else that might want to try to kind of help us understand where the boundary is, that they're exploring all of those elements. You can't just perform one computation on one lattice of one size at one evolution time and one property and say, oh, we've duplicated the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because anytime you introduce a whole bunch of extrapolation, it kind of becomes just myth making at that point. Like you're not able to stand by anything you're doing. Yeah, you do a small subset. Oh, well, we just proved something. No, you really didn't. You just
you have to show the result.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You can't say, well, I've shown the result on this thing, and now I can do everything.
Yeah, right. And that leads into my next question about like how this can grow. So, Advantage 2's fast anneal feature was used, right, as part of this. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it might help scale in the future? Like how things are going? Because I know you're going to add more qubits, and the qubits are getting better. When Alan was on last time, we talked a little bit about the improved reliability of those qubits. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this supremacy result that we published in Science was the data was taken and the experiments were run on a smaller scale Advantage 2 prototype processor. So it's a 1200 qubit, just over 1200 qubits in the fabric of the processor. Mm-hmm. We made this processor available to all of our customers in our Leap cloud platform in February of last year. So we had actually originally run the early supremacy experiments on our Advantage technology, but the Advantage 2 prototype has both higher connectivity and higher coherence. And so that performance gap we noticed very early on. I mean, fundamentally, that's sort of the value of Advantage 2 is really driving toward higher connectivity, higher performance processors. We pivoted and reran all the supremacy results, and actually that formed the basis of our result on the Advantage 2 prototype. So, and then over the last, and we've also made this fast anneal protocol available on all of our QPU solvers. And fundamentally, going back to the role of coherence, the fast anneal protocol allows you to perform both optimizations and like quantum optimization protocols and calculations, and this quantum simulation, these material simulations, using the coherent regime. So on timescales where you're not exchanging energy or information with the environment. So that fast anneal protocol has really been fundamental to unlocking both the supremacy result as well as a growing set of like really important use cases. So over the past year, we've been hard at work calibrating and benchmarking larger scale Advantage 2 processors. And so we, in the fall of last year, we completed calibration and benchmarking of a 4,400 qubit scale Advantage 2 processor. So, and really, we've been able to kind of port the lattice experiments and extend them to scales that are 4 times larger than what we published in Science. And so that we're rapidly innovating and increasing both the scale of the processor as well as sort of the scale of the simulations that we can actually run on this technology. So we're really excited about the Advantage 2 technology. I mean, that the core 2 pillars of increasing the device connectivity and coherence are paying off and giving us incredible performance.
Yeah, you hinted at my next question with the connectivity and coherence. So we have this one use case, but you said about optimization. There's been a lot of belief in the industry that as you guys advance something in optimization, classical methods find a way to kind of catch up a little, and then it's like this back and forth. Do you feel that now optimization might have a big moment, just like the simulation moment that just happened?
Yeah, I mean, in 2023, we published a paper in Nature, really showing a scaling advantage in sort of getting to low energy configurations, so close to optimal configurations of spin glasses. So, so fundamentally, this is a known 3D spin glasses are known to be very hard, and it's a NP hard problem to find optimal configurations. And what we showed was that by using this coherent quantum annealing regime, we could get a scaling advantage over some very standard classical approaches to solving this problem. So fundamentally, we are able to harness a quantum mechanical resource, so quantum coherence, that is giving us a scaling advantage in getting lower energy, higher quality solutions than classical approaches. And so this really, to us, highlights the key role of quantum annealing and quantum coherence, not only in quantum simulation, which is what we've been talking about with our recent Science publication, but for the core computational task of finding low energy configurations to these very, very hard problems.
Yeah, that paper, I remember, it even impressed one of the biggest quantum skeptics on the planet, Sabine Hasselfelder. She was like, "This is really impressive." I was like, "Wow, good job, guys. You got through to her. That's super rare because she trashes just about everything." So I thought that was funny at the time. So now we've got potential for all types of optimization to improve, right? So do you see this as being like a big leap that's going to happen now. Everyone's going to notice it. Not to use the leap word the wrong way, because you also have the platform. Do you see this being something that all of a sudden your many customers, because you have like over 100, right, that are relying on customer advantage? Do you see them noticing something in the very short term now that will open up their eyes?
I mean, at the core, quantum optimization is one of the key use cases of our technology. And so we have examples of customers right now today running in production that getting value with our platform. So with our quantum optimization products and our solvers. So I think, one of the perspective that I like to have is that as we grow the fundamental technology, the capability technology, both in coherence, connectivity, and scale, this is unlocking not only better performance and increased performance and optimization, but growing sets of use cases. So quantum simulation, material simulation is now a use case that we can point to that is extremely powerful. So I don't know if you were followed, but last week we posted to the archive and announced that we have a prototype quantum blockchain, basically using the core supremacy regime. So basically using the fact that we're doing a calculation that just cannot be done classically to establish a blockchain technology that relies on proof of quantum work. So, and one of the real values, like the exciting things about this is that it has a potential for basically being able to do this, the basic blockchain distributed trust, and providing that without the energy consumption or the vast amounts of energy consumption that classical blockchains like the blockchain underpinning Bitcoin consume.
Yeah, so there was proof of stake, of course, that tried to save some energy, and now you're doing proof of quantum work. I was going to ask you about that because I was curious how that would play in the world as this idea with decentralization is that it's in the powers in the hands of everybody and all that. Well, obviously, you access D-Wave machines. Not everyone's not going to have one in their basement, right, for the foreseeable future, at least. So I was just wondering if you had like a philosophical thought on what that would look like if we wanted to try and roll something out that relies on quantum technology. Would it be like that you have an equitable access to it to do that piece of it, and then it's still something you own? Just to like clarify that for folks.
So first of all, Konstantinos, we did demonstrate this blockchain application running in a distributed quantum network across 4 of our systems. Mm-hmm. So we understand the importance of blockchain being a distributed, not a centralized platform. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we think that's one of the first times, if not the first time, that anybody has demonstrated a distributed quantum application. I mean, most people are struggling to get an application working on a quantum computer. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, and this is for the first time a truly distributed quantum application where users can use any one of the quantum computers to basically create the hashing function that underlies the proof of work. Any of the quantum computers can use to validate the hashing function to determine that it's a valid addition to the blockchain, and so on. So distributed is key. As far as ensuring that there's sufficient systems and capacity to be able to run that blockchain, at the point in time at which we're really ready to roll something like this out, there are a variety of different approaches that we could use to ensuring that there's equal access. Mm-hmm. For example, we could choose to sell the systems, maybe at a very reasonable price, to help seed the ability for this to be a truly distributed system. We could perhaps help a third party or a set of third parties set up cloud infrastructures that would provide equal access with no centralized point of control. So there are mechanisms that we could employ to achieve this, and we're already starting to think through that. But the next step is to take what is this proof of concept that we have running and really refine it to the point where we think it's ready for prime time as a product, and then most likely work with third parties to help figure out the best way to actually bring that to market.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I knew about the distribution already that's there, the decentralization. I just 100% was focused on the idea of people see that still as these are quantum computers as nodes or whatever, and they're not ours, right? so some people get very
Well, we did announce that at the end of Q4 we sold our first Advantage quantum computer, and so it could be yours.
Yeah, that's true. So the idea of proof of stake, like how much money you have in Ethereum, this is a whole kind of other stake. I have a multi-million-dollar system. That is stake for sure.
Yeah, it is, but keep in mind that there are many different ways to monetize this kind of a capability, and we could choose to make these systems available in a very cost-effective fashion to create value for D-Wave in other ways. But we'll work through the details of that.
What's the next big problem you want to tackle? We felt that this paper was coming. There were the hints in the past and leading up, right? And here it is. So what avenue do you see tackling next? Is there like it's going to be a surprise, like business use case paper, like, hey, we cracked Monte Carlo simulations? I don't know. Is there going to be something really hyper specific like that? So I get that you can do magnetic materials in the world, but most companies don't do specialized physical things. They crunch numbers, right? So what's this next big surprise maybe that you might be leaning towards?
So since Trevor is our chief development officer and owns all of our technology and products, I'm very curious to hear how he answers this question.
Yeah, I mean, so where we're really focused in terms of where we want to take the technology is, so we think that there's a real sort of natural synergy between AI and quantum computing. So we're, and I think we're very excited about sort of the capabilities that we've demonstrated and published with the Supremacy results. And so we have an active, we have customers that are actually very interested in exploring sort of use of our QPUs to accelerate AI and to fix some of the scaling challenges that I think we're starting to see crop up in AI. So if you're talking about energy consumption, I mean, if you look at sort of where all of these hyperscalers are going, these very large GPU clusters are doing model training, but the cost is just a massive amount of electricity. And so we see a real opportunity to use our annealing QPUs as AI accelerators. So inserting them into modern machine learning models and getting sort of models that are smaller, that are easier to train, that are cheaper to do inference on. So this is sort of a fundamental focus for us. So, and I think we and our, we have some customers that are very excited about this. So we also are really excited about basically the capturing and harnessing quantum coherence. So, and this coherent regime has been a complete game changer in terms of really driving the performance of our technology. So, not only this fast anneal protocol, which has been really fundamental to all of our work over the last couple of years, but we have prototype versions of increasingly powerful novel protocols. So, basically, next generation QPU controls that should unlock the ability to do even richer sets of material simulations, could give us richer distributions for quantum AI, and in general give a set of tools that really are going to push sort of like what you can do with our technology and really establish that we're doing fundamental things well beyond the scope of classical computing. I mean, at a high level, we remain very focused on quantum optimization. We see this as a real sort of sweet spot for our technology, and we see a huge long-term advantage over maturing gate model approaches in optimization. So we think we will always outperform gate model approaches in terms of quantum technology for optimization. So this really does remain a core focus, but in terms of what we're excited about, we can expect next. I mean, it's really kind of the synergy between AI and quantum computing is I think keep your eyes peeled for that.
So there'll be a quantum GPT or something. Possibly. That would be kind of cool. And because you mentioned gate-based approaches, and I touched on this with Alan last time, I was just curious if there's been any more thought given to what that looks like in the future. These are very stable qubits, and I'm assuming there's a way to get them to perform gate operations, especially as their numbers grow. Is there any plans to push on that in the immediate future?
Yeah, I mean, so we're using for our, we have a gate model technology development effort that we announced a year or two ago. So it's really focused on like building scalable error-corrected gate model technology. So we think that gate model technology is going to require error correction to really deliver utility. And so from the ground up, you need scalable control, and you need the error correction built in, even in the early prototypes. So this has really been our focus. We're also remain convinced that superconducting approaches are have a long-term advantage in building out gate-based technology over some of the other qubit implementations. And we have a lot of experience in the control, the development of flux-based superconducting qubits, and that's forming the core of our gate model effort as well. We're using a qubit called a fluxonium qubit. So, and this is basically parametrically a little bit different, but topologically very, very similar to the devices that are in the core of our annealing processors. And so this gives us, a lot of advantages in terms of the control, all of the cryogenic control that we've developed for our annealing processors translate into basically supporting our gate model effort. So, but again, we are very much focused on how to build a scalable, controllable technology from the very beginning.
I did just want to double down for a minute on our view that superconducting is by far the best approach to building a gate model system, and just give you a little bit of context on that. So oftentimes you'll hear the folks that are doing trapped ions or neutral atoms say, well, our qubits are natural qubits. And as a result, they have very high fidelity, very long coherence times. And they're right. They are natural qubits, and they do have very long coherence times. But the reason why they have long coherence times is because they do not readily interact with the environment. But the problem with that is they don't readily interact with anything, including with one another. And what that means is that it's very hard to build the gates that do the compute in those systems, because you need the qubits to interact with one another in order to compute. The end result of that is that you get very, very slow gates. So the computation times end up being very long. Superconducting, we believe, has a far better balance between qubit coherence time and gate speed. So superconducting qubits don't have coherence times that are as long, but they have much faster gates. The point, though, is they have coherence time, superconducting qubits, long enough to error correct. And that's all that matters. Because once you error correct, then you pretty much have infinitely long qubit coherence time. So you just need it to be long enough to error correct, which we can do with superconducting. And then once you get that, you have very, very fast gates and very fast quantum computers. So the point is that it'll be interesting to see which technology gets us to a scaled, error-corrected quantum computer first. And that's why we're strong believers in superconducting.
Yeah, and Google believes in it too. I mean, their whole error threshold that generated a lot of excitement was you add more qubits and it doesn't do worse because you're not introducing all this extra noise. So I'm assuming you're going with a similar type of approach to error correction. Yet it'll have to be different, right? Because of the nature of qubits, your error correction is going to have to be a little different because of the sort of more like up-down nature of your qubit.
I mean, fundamentally, the superconducting qubits, I mean, the basically one of the most common approaches to doing error correction is something called the surface code methodology. So this is at the core of what Google is building and form the core of sort of some of their recent results. And this is the core of our approach to doing error correction. So
okay. So it doesn't look significantly different.
I mean, the implementation details will look a bit different, but at the high level, I mean, it's the methodology that we're choosing as well.
Yeah. And by the way, Konstantinos, you made a comment about up-down. That's true for our annealing qubits. They're spin up, spin down. Mm-hmm. But for our gate model qubits, while they are fluxonium or controlled by magnetic flux, they are still three-dimensional qubits for the gate model effort.
Great. Okay. Yeah. That's great that we can clarify that too. So exciting stuff coming. I guess the next paper then will be something to do with AI. So I'm going to hold you to that. No, you didn't really say that. I said it, but
I'm glad Trevor answered the question that way because I would have answered it in exactly the same way. And yeah, be on the lookout for that paper.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So that's a great high note to end on. Thanks so much for joining me for the 4th anniversary of this podcast. And this is really exciting news. This is better than just having a specific person on. This is having a new milestone on. So I was really happy to read the paper when it came out. And good luck with the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the time.
Now it's time for Coherence, the Quantum Executive Summary, where I take a moment to highlight some of the business impacts we discussed today, in case things got too nerdy at times. Let's recap. D-Wave has made a groundbreaking achievement in quantum supremacy that has so far stood up to skeptics and challenges. In a recent published paper in Science, D-Wave finally showed quantum computing's ability to solve a practical, real-world problem, simulating properties of magnetic materials, that classical computers cannot feasibly tackle. Unlike previous quantum supremacy claims, such as Google's 2019 and 2024 random circuit sampling papers, which lacked practical utility, D-Wave's work focuses on a problem with significant industrial applications, particularly in material science and sensor technology. This milestone, achieved using D-Wave's Advantage 2 prototype with over 1,200 qubits, marks a pivotal moment in the quantum computing field. The technical underpinnings of D-Wave's success is coherent quantum annealing. Just as it sounds, it's a process that leverages extended qubit coherence times to perform calculations without environmental interference. This approach enabled the simulation of quantum phase transitions in magnetic materials, a task that would take classical computers millions of years and consume vast amounts of energy, equivalent to the annual global energy output. Baratz and Lanting contrast this with classical methods like tensor networks, which struggle to scale beyond the simplest cases, reinforcing the quantum advantage. They also welcome further research from other groups to refine the boundary between classical and quantum capabilities, underscoring the importance of rigorous, transparent science. Beyond material simulation, the company's quantum annealing capabilities are well known for solving optimization problems, which more commonly affect all types of businesses. D-Wave also recently prototyped a quantum blockchain based on proof of quantum work, offering a potentially energy-efficient alternative to traditional blockchains like Bitcoin. This distributed application, run across 4 D-Wave systems, hints at future possibilities for decentralized quantum networks, with a few things to work out around meeting the equitable access requirements of blockchain. Looking ahead, Baratz and Lanting expressed excitement about the synergy between quantum computing and AI. They foresee D-Wave's annealing QPUs accelerating AI tasks such as training smaller, more efficient machine learning models, thereby addressing the energy demands of current GPU-based solutions. The company is also advancing its gate model quantum computing efforts using superconducting fluxonium qubits, aimed for scalable, error-corrected systems. Sounds like there are a few exciting new papers coming too. For now, I couldn't think of a more exciting way to celebrate 4 years of the post-quantum world than covering an achievement that proves we're very much living in it. That does it for this episode. Thanks to Alan Baratz and Trevor Lanting for joining to discuss D-Wave and their amazing results. And thank you for listening, whether to this episode or the past 100. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to Protiviti's The Post-Quantum World and maybe leave a review to help others find us. Be sure to follow me on all socials at Constant Hacker. That's Constant with a K, Hacker. You'll find links there to what we're doing in quantum computing services at Protiviti. You can also DM me questions or suggestions for what you'd like to hear on the show. For more information on our quantum services, check out Protiviti.com or follow Protiviti Tech on X and LinkedIn. Until next time, be kind and stay quantum curious.